Motorpoint Arena is one of the world's most prestigious venues, having staged indoor trial events for 19 consecutive seasons. With the top riders competing on purpose-built sections, the amassing fans should be in for a great night tonight. So it's on to the grand final, and the order for this final will be dictated by a series of double lanes, and these are also to be used if there is a situation on countback later on. So if there's a tie-break later on, this will be vital. Fajardo has made the better start against Cabestan, but he's made a very poor turn. And the veteran Spaniard has taken the advantage and is going to clear away to the finish. Easy stuff there for Cabestan. He's already been successful in one double lane. That's double lane number 2 for Cabestan. The winner stays on to face the next seed, which is Takahisa Fujinami of Japan. So Fujinami takes on Cabestan, and we're underway. Fujinami already once successful in a double lane this season, beating Tony Bow earlier, but he's made a poor turn there. Cabestan's got a much tighter run. Now Fujinami needs to make his momentum count, but he hasn't quite done so. It's tight on the line once again. But in the end, I think it's Cabestan who's just about nicked it there. And in this winner stays on format, Cabestan now has a third ride, this time up against Tony Bow. Defeated once so far in double lanes already by Fujinami. Won't want to disappoint his fans again. Bow's got off to a far better start. He's already on the turn before Cabestan's even got off the vans. And this should be easy now for Tony Bow, who sails away to the win. Tony Bow will be the last rider to take on today's grand final. And once again, the master is showing them how it's done. It's taken a little while to warm up, but he's definitely finding his best form now. Hasn't dropped a point as yet, Tony Bow, the favourite. So, it's Gironi Fajardo who will be the first rider to take on the final after losing the first of the double lanes. Straight onto section 1 and onto the top blocks, the ingots or pepper pots as they're being described. They're hollow shells, and it's quite a launch up for the riders, not an easy thing. As Fajardo has shown twice now, because the first one he dropped a difficulty, and now this time on the second block he's dropped a sump stop, and he's had to put his foot down there. Fajardo's lost 2 points now, one to a sump stop, one to a foot dab, and Fajardo under pressure. 2 points already dropped in this section 1, can't afford any more. He knows that the other 3 riders will have seen what he's done and probably learned from the experience. You've got to really minimise the number of points you drop when you're running first in the final stage, and that's what Fajardo's done. 2 points to his name. It's not a bad start. Now we'll see if either of the more experienced next 2 will be able to better that tally from Gironi Fajardo. Fujinami first up, having to use a sump stop there on the first block. That's cost him a point now already. That's a point that Fajardo hadn't dropped at this stage, so a poor start there for Fujinami. He's been in such good form today, won't want to miss out when it comes to the grand final. And again, another sump stop on the second block. He can't afford to drop another one when he comes down the other side as Fajardo did, or he will be bottom of the pile after his completion of section 1. He's dropped down well, no need to use a foot. And that should mean if he can complete the final elements of this section, he will also have 2 points, and things will be tightening up already in this grand final in Sheffield. Prepares himself well, and over he goes. Fujinami running 2 points there, so 2 points to each of the first 2 to give that a go. Fujinami 3 seconds there under the required time, so a good start for the Japanese rider. Can Cabestan do better? No, again, looks like a sump stop to me there on section number 1. He's over the top of it though. Won't want to drop any more marks or he'll slip out of his favourable position. At the moment, of course, he sits tied with Tony Bow, but these two both still have to tackle section 1. That was definitely a stop there from Kabastan, so he's taken exactly the same system as Fujinami in approach to this section number 1. Just can't afford to drop a mark the other side as Fajardo did. And he hasn't. He's done well. That's a very difficult landing. It's only the length of the actual bike, so they have to drop it on with absolute precision. And that's what Kabastan has done. Just one mid-air turn to go. He's bounced across. This should be easily within time as well for Kabastan. Over he comes, 56.8 seconds, and yes, fractionally slower than Fujinami, but he's through on only 2 marks. So 3 riders now sit on 2. Can Tony Bow go top of the standings? If he manages to only concede 1 penalty point or even to run clear, he's been clear all day so far. He's still clear after the first block. All of the riders have struggled with that one. Fajardo just about kept moving when he did it and didn't concede a penalty point there. So Bow in a similar position, but he's dropped a sump stop there, much to his colourful frustration as he got to the top of that second block. And Bow will now come down the other side, landing perfectly. He's only on 1 point so far. If he can remain within time, he's going to go top of this group. He's well ahead of where the others were in terms of time and in terms of points. Tony Bow, the reigning world champion, sets himself up on the launch pad and away he goes. 50.4 seconds, a full 6 seconds clear of his nearest rival in section number 1. And Tony Bow immediately has the lead after 1 section. Bow on 1, Kabastan, Fujinami and Fajardo all on 2. On to the second section now. Fajardo dropped a careless point first time out, won't want to do the same again. He knows that this is very tight actually as a grand final. Only 1 point separating the 4 riders coming into this section 2. It's a reverse of the logs. Now earlier on, the logs and rocks in the semi-final was a pretty easy stage, but now in the grand final in reverse it's far more challenging, because when you think about the way they were coming down and sloping downwards off the top of the logs, now they've got to do the same, but in reverse. Far further to go, and Fajardo can't make it. He's had to use a lot of encouragement to get to the top there. There's a foot down, there's a sump stop, and his mind is just trying to help him on top now. He needs to remain calm because time is ticking as well, and if he loses another, well, it's going to be game over for Jerome Fajardo. In a difficult position here, he doesn't want to concede a 5. That would really wreck his evening's efforts. He's bridging across towards that longest of the logs in this section 2. The minder with an eye on the time, and Fajardo's fluffed it onto the log. Again, the foot down. And with a time penalty here as well, looking very likely for Fajardo. I think it's all over for the young Spaniard, just 28 years old. But I don't think he's going to match the top guns here. His minder's talking to him about how they progress, and Fajardo drops down. I suppose he didn't want to carry on through the section and reveal the ideal course to the forthcoming riders, because if they all drop a 5 now, it will all tighten back up. Fujinami, the next rider to approach this section 2. Onto the first log easily enough. There's a cut branch there that he's got to manage his way on top of. Front wheel first, back wheel second, lands the other side with alacrity. As ever, Fujinami taking this with some pace. No doubting this man's speed, is there? Full throttle, and he's up on top, and he has had to use a sump, but no foot down at the moment for Fujinami. What's he going to have to use to haul it on? No, just sheer body weight as he leans forward and brings the machine up. There's not a lot of body weight there on Fujinami, but he's managed to make what he did have count. And he's down the other side and looking good here. Onto the rock with a momentary loss of balance on his right foot, and he's up onto the top. Foot down, and he's come down. Fujinami is off, and those are 5 costly points. They throw him back into the ring, along with Fajardo on 7. The applause around this stadium for a rider who's very popular here in Sheffield. But Kabastan has an opportunity to go ahead of Fujinami in the battle for the podium positions if he can now avoid a maximum 5 on this section 2. Kabastan, well, the early part of this section has been easy enough for both of the 2 riders who faced off so far, Fajardo and Fujinami. We're in a group stage now in this grand final. Knockout right up to now, and now all the points are starting to accumulate. The grand final being the sole decider of championship points, and up onto the top block is Kabastan, and looking good. Down the other side, that is easy enough. Harder in reverse, obviously, because he's got to land it without falling off the edge, and the rock cuts away as well. So Kabastan with all the work to do, but at the moment he's looking good. Poor for time. He's in a difficult position for time. I think he is just about approaching the 1 minute already. So he needs to try and stay within 90 seconds now, because that would be a second penalty point. So far he hasn't dropped much, and Should be able to run clear here. He's just trying to absorb himself into this section, losing footing, costing himself still more time. He's definitely lost 1 penalty point to time now, but comes down the other side, and eventually it's 2 points for observation and 1 for time as Cabestan hits 90 seconds dead on. Another 1/10 of a second, and Cabestan would have been facing a maximum penalty, but just about stays on only 5 points after 2 completed sections. So Bo approaching with calm approach here as he goes straight up onto the top. This is a man who rarely drops a 5, but if he does so, he won't be in top spot anymore. And that's a status he's held now for some time. Tony Bo, rarely defeated from event to event, let alone on a section, but he's just taken a bit of a dab there. That's going to cost him a point. Bo down the other side. No great difficulties on the rocks. He's got to fire himself up to the top of this one to then give himself the full approach for the remainder of the section. Bo calm, not worrying about time too much. He knows that if he only drops 3 points, he'll be in front in this section, but I'm sure he'll want to go as clear as possible. He has already dropped 1. Is he going to be within time? Yes, he is! 58.9 seconds, and Tony Bo has cleared it by 1 second, and therefore only drops 2 there. So Albert Cabestan dropped 3. Bo is now in front by 2 marks. Bo on 3, Cabestan 5, Fujinami and Fajardo both on 7 as the latter approaches section number 3, and it's the skips. The first skip is the easier of the 2. The second is where it's tough. They drop down, and then they've got 2 hills to mount here. The first, which angles very steeply, and the second, which is the longer of the 2, is even harder. That's where the Minder's standing at the moment, waiting for Fajardo to make the launch. He's got the first, he hasn't got the second. Slippery paint, you can see the rubber that's been laid down as the riders have tried to approach that skip, but it's far from easy, as Fajardo proved there, dropping a 5 and moving on to 12. Next up, Fujinami. He can go clear into a podium position if he avoids dropping a 5. This is the type of section that should suit this rider. He's known for being full throttle, maximum power, and that's what you really need on this second skip to get up the first with enough drive and momentum to carry you forward over the top of the seconds. Fujinami settling himself in then, and up he goes. He's just about managed it. The foot was wiggling in the air, waiting to do something if required, and Fujinami's done well there to get over the second of the 2 skips, and now he's going to have to power up. This is tough because there's a very narrow ridge to use to bounce up, but Fujinami's made it look easy, and through he goes. Now he'll be able to come back down the other side. I don't think he's going to do it in terms of time here. And no, he doesn't. He's 8 seconds shy, in fact, but in the end, caution was the better part of Valor. Fujinami picking up 1 on observation, 1 on time, and therefore takes a clear 3rd position after 3 completed sections. So with Fujinami now on 9, Cabestan only needs to avoid picking up a 5, and he'll remain in a podium position, but really he wants to chase after the win, so he needs to try and run clear on this skip section. He's under pressure because Bo is 2 points better off than Cabestan, but the elder of the 2 has made that look pretty easy. 1 foot in the air, much as Fujinami did over that section, just to keep the balance as he drops down now into the skip. And will try and fire himself up. And over he goes. And on top, a good effort there from Cabestan, who'll now drop down sideways over to the other side and launch himself across, and he's done it in time as well. So totally clear for Cabestan. 56.2 seconds, a full 12 clear of Fujinami. And that is the difference between the 2 riders now after 3 sections. A 4-point disparity between Cabestan and Fujinami, and another 4 between Fujinami and Fajardo. But here's the master, Tony Bo. Can he run clear as well? If he drops anything, he's putting himself in a tough position for the remaining section of this grand final. Tony Bo prepares for the toughest part of this section and does it with ease. Like Cabestan, no need to put a foot down, no sump stopping, moving all the time. And that should help him now towards a clear, although he hesitated for a moment there coming onto the second tower, but he's done well. And Tony Bo, as long as he does it within time now, has taken a clear run in section 3. No points dropped, so it's Bo 3, Cabestan 5, Fujinami 9, and Fajardo on 12. Fajardo out of the running for a top 2 finish, but could still take a podium, of course. So that's what he's aiming for as he comes onto section 4. It's the sleeper section. Hasn't been tackled in the semis or final as yet. We've got 2 challenging towers. This is the first of the 2, and they're of more or less equal height. See how Fajardo does on the first. He's got up there. He's scrabbled his way to the top, but he hasn't cost himself too much in terms of time either. Good first effort there from Fajardo. Now he's got the tough challenge of dropping down the other side without falling, which he's negotiated well, and on to the second. Revving hard as possible, and he's through. Brilliant. The first rider to approach the sleeper section. It wasn't tackled in the semis, but Fajardo has surmounted that pretty easily in the grand final. On now to Fujinami for section 4. Can't afford to drop 3 points or more, because then that will place Fajardo in the podium positions, and Fujinami would be the unfortunate here. So Fujinami eyeing up the first tower, needs to get to the top. And he's done so, one leg flailing, his minder just keeping his arm to one side, just in case it's needed for Fujinami. It is a high tower, you really don't want to fall from there, but Fujinami hasn't done so. Sets himself up now for the second tower. If he clears this one, he will be guaranteed at least a podium position here. And he's up part way, but he's dropped a foot and down he goes. And Fujinami screams in frustration because he knows that's cost him a podium position. Fujinami finishes on 14, cannot now do better than 4th, and Fajardo moves 2 points above him on 12. Neither of those two can feature on the podium. Kabastan can afford to drop a full 5 here, and he'll still be in the top 2. And he wants to get the better of Tony Bow, wants to start the season positively. He's straight up onto the top of section, the first element of this section, without too much difficulty. Putting himself sideways, using his left leg to balance there as he now drops down the other side. Went pretty deep on that run down, but he settles himself back into position. Resting on the front wheel there. That's key, because he's not going to drop any penalty points like that, and he's through. So Kabastan doesn't drop any points, and a good time as well for section number 4. Faster than Fajardo managed, even by 3 seconds. Tony Bow, if he manages not to drop 3 points here, he will be the champion in Sheffield once again. So many times he's been victorious in this Motor Point Arena. Can he do it again? Tony Bow, the first tower. Up he goes, even easier than Kabastan, if anything. Looking the class act here today. He didn't drop any points through the qualifiers or the semi-final, and now in the final he's dropped only 3. It gives him a confidence cushion. He can use a foot if he needs to, but he doesn't need to. Tony Bow runs clear in section 4 to win here in Sheffield by a 2-point margin, surviving the last-minute nerves to run clear in the final 2 sections and win out in front of an adoring crowd. They've all come to see the master perform. He gets congratulations from his fellow countrymen after running clear in an incredible closing stages. What drama this new format has given us in the grand final. Only 4 sections to make it count, and Tony Bow did exactly that. So Bow finishes on 3 with Kabastan on 5, Fajardo on 12 and Fujinami on 14. They will be somewhat disappointed in the end to have missed out by such a margin against the top 2. So a look at today's classification. Bow out in front, Kabastan takes second, and Fajardo on the final step of the podium in third.
I'm very happy for my riding. With this pressure is incredible. All pressure in the semi-final, in the final again, waiting for the last section for the victory. I think it's very happy for my riding and for this victory.
So in today's classification, no British riders make it into the top 5 in front of their home fans. James Dable, the highest ranked, in 6th, with Michael Brown and Jack Challoner bringing up the rear. Adam Ragger will be disappointed to take a mere 6 points from a disappointing Sheffield event as he watches on. It's a Spanish podium lockout. Tony Bow, the final rider, stepping up onto that podium, flanked by his fellow countrymen Gironi Fajardo and Albert Kabastan. A great day for Bow, who dropped only 3 points all day. But Fajardo should be pleased to have taken third from Fujinami at the final hurdle, and Kabastan will be well aware he sits only 5 points behind Bow going into round 2 later on this season.
Okay.